Chapter 26 to 27. The time of night seemed like an eternity for the members of Team 7. They had made camp inside a cave that was surrounded by trees from all sides, providing a sort of natural cover. While Hinata had set up traps on all sides throughout the night, Sakura stayed beside Sasuke, who was still unconscious. Although he wasn't shaking uncontrollably like earlier, his body temperature kept fluctuating the entire night. Sakura had also placed a wet cloth above his forehead to regulate his fever and also used medical ninjutsu on him every half an hour. It was suffice to say that none of the girls got any sleep and the tiredness was evident from the abysmal look on their faces. "Is he getting any better, Sakura?" Hinata questioned. She was laying back against the wall beside Sakura with half-lidded eyes. "I don't really know. I can't tell for certain. His chakra has been acting up constantly the past few hours. It looks to be undergoing some sort of change." Sakura replied tiredly. She wasn't faring much better than Hinata too. The two girls had hardly eaten anything since last evening. Sakura and Hinata were suddenly jerked out of their thoughts when they heard sounds coming from outside the cave. Hinata glanced towards Sakura briefly with prudence. Stay here while I go out and check, alright?" Hinata whispered. Sakura nodded quietly and moved closer to Sasuke. As soon as Hinata stepped outside the cave, her senses went on alert upon feeling that something wasn't right. Most of the traps she had set up were thrashed and she could also hear low rustling sounds around her. Activating her Byakugan at once, she threw 3 kunais to her 10 o'clock. She composed herself when 3 Otogekure genins suddenly jumped out of hiding and now stood in front of her. "What do you want?" Hinata asked firmly and gripped another kunai in her hand. She was clearly not in the mood to entertain these Otogekure genins. If memory served her right, she remembered one of the Oto genins to be the person who threw the kunai towards Kabuto before the start of written part of the Chunin exams. "Look at her act so bravely. Let me take her down, Dosu," stated the genin with spiky, black hair and dark eyes. Dosu merely grunted in reply and that was all the confirmation Zaku needed. "We are here to kill Sasuke Uchiha," he stated out loud. Hinata's eyes widened for a while on hearing that proclamation but narrowed her eyes soon after. "You'll have to get past me first." Hinata replied sharply and rushed towards her opponent without further ado. Zaku smirked at the foolishness of the girl and raised his arm to point it towards Hinata. As soon as Hinata was in striking distance of her opponent, she attempted a diagonal upward slash with her kunai. A little surprised at her speed, Zaku quickly sidestepped the attack and released a blast of compressed air pressure from his hand. Hinata suddenly found herself thrown back several feet but managed to regain her footing. A second later, she suddenly found herself feeling wobbly and clutched her left ear in pain. What was that? Hinata thought with caution. Observing his arm carefully, her Byakugan noticed there were several hollow tube-like structures implanted inside of his arm. So, that's it. He's manipulating chakra inside those tubes to release pressurized air from his hands. Hinata thought, as she managed to regain her composure. However, she had to jump away immediately when Zaku lunged towards her. "I'll need to maintain distance from his hand. If I'm hit with one of those again, I may not be able to stand properly," Hinata thought strategically. Taking out several more kunais, she coated them with Raiton chakra and expertly threw them towards Zaku, each kunai aimed at a vital spot. The few seconds that Zaku took to deflect the kunais, he suddenly lost sight of Hinata, before him. Quickly turning back, he once again pointed his arm as he saw her within an arm's distance with her finger stretched towards him. He smirked when his hand was right beside her face. "I got her," Zaku thought with a smirk. However, to his surprise, Hinata suddenly ducked down and gave swift strikes to his arm, successfully closing down several tenketsu points on his arms. By the time Zaku realized what had happened, Hinata swatted him off the ground that made him lose his balance. "Hack Kusho," Hinata said and gave a high-speed palm thrust to Zaku's chest at point blank, while he was still in air. Zaku hit the ground with a resounding thud and coughed up blood as a result. He groaned in pain, not expecting to be outdone like this and cursed out loud at not able to feel a thing on his left arm. He could barely manage to lift it. Just as Hinata was about to jump away and focus on the others, Zaku quickly caught her leg with his right arm, intending to throw her away with his remaining strength. However, before he could even summon any further strength, Hinata swiftly turned around to crouch and planted a kunai in his head. As Zaku's hand loosened around her ankles, Hinata immediately jumped away when she heard clattering sounds behind her. Getting her focus back after realizing what she had done, she noticed that Sakura had joined the fight and was fighting against the other two members of Zaku's team, who looked extremely displeased by their teammate's death. As Hinata took another step forward, she suddenly fell on one knee as her body succumbed to the tiredness. Damn it! Damn it! Why now? Hinata thought in desperation. While Hinata was down on the ground, Sakura was trying her best to fend off the constant attacks of the shinobi whose face was mostly covered in bandages. Dosu was highly surprised on seeing the Hyuga girl make a sport out of Zaku, and for some reason he felt angered on seeing his teammate die. Even though he and Zaku were not really close, he had spent the past 6 years with him. Getting back to the matter at hand, he kept pressuring the pink-haired girl with a barrage of swift punches, but the girl simply kept dodging all of them. He was irked that none of his attacks were even getting close to the girl. On his next move, he expertly performed a feint hook to her left and subsequently followed it up with a quick punch with his right arm. Sakura flipped over Dosu and attempted a roundhouse kick, but Dosu blocked her kick with a single arm. Catching her ankle with his left arm, he swirled her around a couple of times, before throwing her away. Sakura hit one of the trees roughly but still got up. She composed herself by taking a deep breath and quickly made a few hand seals. Suetun, Mizu no Muchi, Sakura uttered as she created several water whips that quickly proceeded towards Dosu. Jumping over the water whips, Dosu was surprised that the whips were following him around. Glancing towards the pink-haired girl, he noticed that Sakura was controlling the whips with her hands. Quickly thinking on his feet, Dosu once again flipped above another few water whips and lunged towards Sakura, who hadn't moved from her place. Shit, I won't be able to redirect my attack towards him in time. Sakura thought with wide eyes. However, everyone in the area was surprised when a genin wearing complete green-colored clothing appeared in front of Sakura and before their eyes could follow, kicked Dosu in the chest making him fly back. Sakura-chan, are you alright? Lee asked as he kept his eyes focused in front of him. Sakura sighed in relief and cancelled her jutsu to calm her breathing. I am really grateful, Lee. You saved me there. Sakura replied in relief. Even Hinata breathed a sigh of relief on noticing Lee's arrival. However, before she could think of anything else, her attention moved towards the third member of the Otogekure Genin squad. While Hinata was down and Sakura kept Dosu busy, Kin had sneaked past all the traps outside the cave, was heading towards Sasuke with the intent to kill him. Just as she was about to enter the cave, Kin found her body frozen on the spot and was unable to move at all. Looking down, she noticed that her shadow was outstretched. Following it, she cursed on seeing another Konoha shinobi at the other end. Shikamaru was standing behind one of the trees with his hands in the snake seal, as he held the Oto Genin in her place with his Kage-main no Jutsu. Ino and Choji were standing a few feet behind their teammate and were observing the events unfold with worried eyes. Although, Shikamaru had a serious look after seeing Hinata kill that Oto Genin. By this time, Dosu had regained his footing and was nursing his chest a little. The strength behind that kick was certainly greater than he had expected. Observing the battlefield, he cursed his luck on seeing several Konoha Genins around him. He couldn't understand how the situation had turned against them. Orochimaru had informed them that the Konoha Genins were not all that strong and could be dealt with easily. But, the Hyuga and the pink-haired girl were anything but weak. Losing his cool, he rushed towards the green-clad shinobi in front of him and aimed a kick to his face. Lee ducked under the kick and aimed for an uppercut which was swiftly dodged by Dosu. With quick reflexes, Dosu threw yet another punch towards Lee that he blocked with his arm. But this time Dosu smirked and molded his chakra to redirect high-intensity sound waves to his opponent's ears. Lee immediately felt himself getting sick as his stance loosened up quite a bit and he stumbled back a little. Taking advantage of Lee's lack of concentration, Dosu aimed another punch, but to his surprise Lee still managed to block his punch, albeit sloppily. However, this time Dosu released a much higher concentration of sound waves that directly hit Lee. As Lee stumbled back and lost his footing, Dosu kicked him in the sternum harshly that made the green-clad genin fall onto the ground. I need to get up and fight. I can't let Lee take all the damage. Both Sakura and Hinata thought simultaneously. However, before the two could move, everyone in the area froze when they felt an ominous feeling suddenly surround them. Looking towards the source, everyone was surprised to see Sasuke standing beside Kin. But the strange part was that the right side of his body was covered in black markings and a dark violet color chakra swirled around him. Just looking at Sasuke, gave everyone a cold feeling. Why does he have Orochimaru-sama's curse mark? Dosu thought as a bit of sweat formed on his face. This just further complicated things. Hinata and Sakura had highly worried expressions on noticing the cold look appear on Sasuke's face. They had never seen such a dead look on him. And that smirk sent chills through their entire body. This is true power. Sasuke whispered as he looked down at his hands. He didn't know what exactly had happened, but he could feel an incredible amount of power dwelling inside of him and wanted to test it out as soon possible. That's when his gaze fell upon two shinobi who wore the headband of another village. His smirk widened even more as he found his targets. Within a blink of an eye, Sasuke appeared behind Dosu and the Oto Genin's eyes widened as he couldn't even track Sasuke's movements. Before Dosu could react, Sasuke gave a hard kick to his face that made Dosu fly to the side and crash through several trees with immense force. Dosu immediately fell unconscious upon impact and his body limply fell on the ground. This is it, with this power, I can finally kill him. Sasuke whispered under his breath as he clenched his fists with a grin. Hinata and Sakura cautiously approached their teammate. They were apprehensive to see Sasuke act so strange. Sasuke-kun. You need to calm down and take a deep breath. You're not yourself right now. Hinata called out to him with concern. Sasuke glanced towards her and quirked an eyebrow. Don't stand in my way, Hinata. This doesn't concern you. Sasuke replied with a scoff. Sasuke. Do you hear yourself? You don't know what you're saying. You are the one who needs to stand down. You were unconscious the whole night and were burning up with fever. Both of us took care of you. Sakura yelled with misty eyes. She couldn't understand why he was acting this way. However, as soon as the words left her mouth, realization dawned on her as she wondered if it was due to the seal that was on his neck. Hinata glanced towards Sakura and both the girls understood each other's trail of thoughts. Thereafter, Sakura promptly moved towards Sasuke with a kunai in her hand. Sasuke senselessly laughed and caught Sakura's wrist before she could do anything. However, in that split second, Hinata mustered her remaining strength and rushed behind Sasuke and struck a few tenketsu points on his neck that made the Uchiha fall unconscious yet again. Once Sasuke fell on the ground and the black markings covering his body also receded back into the seal. Both the girls sighed in relief as they were able to subdue Sasuke for the time being. Meanwhile, Shikamaru approached Kin who was still trapped under his jutsu and placed a kunai on her throat. Take your teammate and leave. We don't want any more trouble here. The young Nara stated with narrowed eyes. For once, even he was confused as to what was happening here and couldn't come to any conclusion of sorts. He felt it was best if his team grouped up with the remaining Konoha rookie genin teams and proceeded towards the tower. Maybe then he could get some answers. He may not like the Uchiha much, but Sasuke was still one of them. Seeing that one of her teammate was killed and the other one unconscious, Kin knew that she had no chance in completing the mission and raised her arms in defeat. All right. I will take my teammate and leave the area quietly. She replied a bit irritatingly. She was annoyed that none of her teammates had listened to her about scouting their targets beforehand and gauging their strength. She was also worried about what Orochimaru would do. She turned around and walked towards her knocked-out teammate. Picking up Dosu, she once again glanced towards all the Konoha genins and without saying anything further, ran in the opposite direction. Seeing that everything was quiet, Ino and Choji rushed towards Sakura and Hinata who were picking up Sasuke from the ground while Shikamaru moved towards Lee, who was beginning to wake up. Sakura, Hinata, what the hell happened to you guys and what was with Sasuke? He appeared to be different than usual. Ino asked the two girls urgently. Yet again, Sakura and Hinata exchanged a subtle glance and decided not to indulge much until they knew everything. I don't really know Ino. We were resting over here when those Otogekure genins showed up. And I really don't know what happened with Sasuke. This is the first time we saw him like this too. Sakura replied with a straight face. Sasuke did look really different and those black patterns around his body. It seems strange to be honest. Choji commented. Hinata and Sakura nodded as they supported Sasuke from either sides. They just wanted to get to the tower and meet up with Kakashi and Naruto. Those two would definitely know what was happening to Sasuke. Have you gotten both the scrolls? Hinata questioned, hoping to divert the topic. Ino gave a weak smile and quickly took out 2 scrolls from her pouch with a wide smile. Hinata assumed that Ino and Choji had not seen her kill the Oto Genin, otherwise she was certain Ino would have bombarded her with questions. Yeah, we got it a few hours ago from one of the Kumogakure teams. Although, Shikamaru and Choji did most of the work. Ino stated sheepishly. A few seconds later, Hinata turned her attention to her left when she saw Lee approaching them. "Oh, Lee-kun, how are you feeling? I'm really sorry that you got involved in this fight," Hinata said apologetically. Even Sakura lowered her gaze a little but was surprised when she heard Lee's voice. "It's no problem, Hinata-chan, Sakura-chan. Although, I must return to my team now. Let's show our flames of youth in the third round of the Chunin exams," Lee replied enthusiastically. He felt a lot better than before as the nauseated feeling had almost faded. Hinata and Sakura chuckled and then gave a grateful smile to the green-clad genin. Shortly after that, Lee too left the area and ran towards his team. "Do you want to go to the tower together? I assume your team has also acquired both the scrolls?" Shikamaru questioned. He kept glancing towards Sasuke, especially at the black seal that was visible on his neck. He had a bunch of questions that he wanted to ask but knew it wasn't the right time. "Oh yeah. That's perfect. Both of our teams can join up for the time being, then we can fend off the adversaries much easily," Ino added cheerfully. "Thanks, Shikamaru. I think that'll be good. The three of us are not in a good condition to fight another team," Hinata replied frankly. Shikamaru simply nodded and a few minutes later Team 10 and 7 immediately left for the tower after gathering all of their belongings. 2 days later. 2 days had quickly passed by since Team 7 and 10 had arrived at the tower. Upon reaching the tower earlier, Sakura and Hinata had immediately rushed Sasuke to a room and made him rest on a bed. Since the Jounin sensei were not allowed inside the building until the end of the exam, they couldn't get any word out. Although, much to their relief, Sasuke's condition had improved relatively over the course of 2 days. His fever had dwindled and even his grumpy mood had become slightly better. Those teams that had failed to collect both the Heaven and Earth scrolls were immediately escorted off the premises by the end of the 5th day. Currently, all the teams that had passed the second round were grouped in a large hall within the tower. The hall had a large statue of a pair of hands forming the Hitsuji/Ram hand seal on one end along with standings on 2 sides of the hall for the spectators to stand. From Konoha, Team 7, 8, 9, 10 and Kabuto's squad had qualified while from Kyomogakure it was Samui's team and from Sunagakure, it was Gaara and his siblings. The hall was filled with chatter and whispers among the genins as they waited for their sensei and the Hokage to arrive. Sasuke shifted in his place a bit uncomfortably as he suddenly placed his hand above the seal on his neck. The action wasn't unnoticed by his teammates as Hinata and Sakura promptly stepped beside him. "Is it acting up again?" Sakura asked worriedly. She was genuinely worried about his health. Even though he appeared to be fine, she could tell that the seal was interfering with his chakra network. "I will be fine. Don't worry about me," Sasuke grumbled, trying to keep a calm face. Few moments later, Minato, Heiei, Anko and Naruto entered followed by the Jounin sensei for each of the teams that were gathered. All the genin participants focused their attention in front of them as Minato stepped forward and gazed over all of them with keen eyes. "Congratulations to all who have passed the second round of the Chunin exams. While it may have been easy for some of you, I'm sure there were teams who had quite a hard time too. But, at the end all that matters is that you managed to complete the objective that was given to you. The Chunin exams is not only held to gauge the strength of the individual shinobi from each village for promotion," Minato stated, and everyone in the room paid absolute attention to the man who was regarded as the strongest Kage in the elemental nations. Even the team from Kyomogakure listened to each word carefully. The current Raikage of Kyomogakure had openly admitted his inferiority towards his rival, the Yondaime Hokage. And respecting strength was a common tradition taught in Kyumo. But it is also held as a substitute for war and to analyze the strength of the respective nation. The third part of the Chunin exams is witnessed by the official delegators of different nations. Depending on the genin's performance, the nation also attracts more business and tourists which augments the economy. Now, as for the third part. Minato was suddenly interrupted by Heiei, who stepped beside him. "Hokage-sama, if I may?" Heiei asked and coughed lightly into his hand. Minato simply nodded and stepped back to let the Jounin continue further. "My name is Heiei Gecko and I'll be the proctor for the third part of the Chunin exams. However, before we proceed, we will need to hold preliminaries since there are too many participants still remaining," Heiei announced. Most of the genins were unsettled at that prospect and the displeasure was clearly evident on their faces. "Hey! What the hell? Some of us came back from the forest just a few hours ago." It was Kiba who voiced his thoughts and several others nodded, agreeing with the young Inuzuka. "You can't do that. Won't we be given any time to rest or prepare for the preliminary? Kankuro questioned as he stared at the proctor with an annoyed expression. Even though his team had finished the second part on the first day itself, it was necessary for him to be among the finalists for the third part. I'm afraid the preliminaries will be held right now and cannot be postponed any further. As you were told, the finals of the Chunin exams will host several officials, which will also include the daimyos of participating nations. Hence, we cannot afford to stretch the finals for too long. However, if anyone wants to quit now, you may do so. The preliminaries will be one-on-one fights between the participants. Heiate stated firmly, completely ignoring Kiba and Kankuro's rants. Most of the genins became quiet for a few seconds until they heard someone take a step forward. I would like quit right now. I'm quite tired from the time spent in the Forest of Death and don't have much chakra left to partake in a fight. Kabuto stated out loud. A lot of the people were surprised on hearing Kabuto's words, especially the genins from Konoha, since they knew the number of times Kabuto had failed the Chunin exams. Even Naruto found it a little odd since he couldn't exactly ascertain what Kabuto was thinking based on his facial expression. The blonde discreetly looked over Kabuto's chakra coils with his Rinnegan and narrowed his eyes immediately. Kabuto's chakra reserves were almost on par with Kakashi's and were well developed too. Also, based on how smooth the chakra flow was, Naruto was certain that Kabuto had extremely proficient control over his chakra. Alright, please move to the back of the hall and you'll be escorted outside training ground 44 shortly. Heiate replied. He once again asked if anyone wished to leave and then continued to explain the rules of the battle when no one else replied. Meanwhile, Kabuto walked outside the hall where he met up with a Chunin and moved towards the exit of training ground 44. Something's not right, Naruto thought. His gaze then suddenly fell upon Sasuke and quirked an eyebrow when Naruto saw him clutch his neck uncomfortably. Did you notice? There's a seal on Sasuke's neck. Naruto nodded when he heard Kakashi whisper to him. Do you think it was him? Kakashi asked seriously. I can't say anything for certain now. After the encounter, I was certain that Orochimaru had left the area since I couldn't feel his chakra. But the man is known to be elusive. You should definitely check up on him. I don't have much experience with Fuinjutsu, Naruto replied, keeping a straight face. After his match gets over, I will take him aside and inspect the seal, Kakashi said. Alright. You do that. I will go talk to Toussaint about this, Naruto said in a hushed voice. Unaware to the two, Anko heard the brief conversation between Naruto and Kakashi. She was informed that Orochimaru had come to Konoha and snuck into the Forest of Death while the genins were there. After hearing Naruto and Kakashi's words, it became clear to her for what reason. Unconsciously, she too clutched her neck where her former sensei had given her the seal, years ago. Before she could walk towards the Hokage and talk to him about this matter, she noticed that Naruto had already moved next to Minato. She decided to stand back and keep a close eye on Sasuke, in case the situation got out of hand. While she was surprised that Sasuke managed to survive Orochimaru's cursed seal, she also knew the dangers it brought. Toussaint, there's something you need to know about. I think I know why Orochimaru had come back to the village. Naruto spoke quietly. Minato kept a calm look and simply looked ahead. Although, he nodded, indicating Naruto to continue. Shortly after that, the Jounin sensei walked to the standing above, with their respective teams. While Team 7, 8 and 9 stood on the left standings, Team 10 and the ones from Kyumo and Suna stood on the other side. The screen on top will display the names of 2 genin at random and only those 2 are required to come down for the fight. Heiate said out loud and pointed towards the large screen just beside the statue. Sasuke, what happened back in the forest? Kakashi asked genuinely. For a moment, Sasuke was surprised that Kakashi already knew about it, but he simply sighed knowing he couldn't have hidden it anyway. We have no clue how it happened, Kakashi-sensei. We were sleeping at night under a tree and then suddenly we heard Sasuke scream and he fell unconscious after that. That's when we saw that mark on his neck, Hinata said. Thereafter, Kakashi observed the seal on Sasuke's neck and at first glance he knew what it was. He glanced towards Naruto who was standing beside Minato and nodded. Is he going to be okay, sensei? Sakura questioned. Kakashi turned towards the pink-haired girl, gave a comforting smile under his mask. Don't worry, Sakura. He then turned towards Sasuke and his voice turned a tad bit serious. I will advise you not to use much chakra in your fight. This seal on your neck is not an ordinary one. The more chakra you use, the more influence the mark will have on you. After your match, I will put a seal on top of this cursed mark to inhibit its influence on you. Then we'll see if it can be removed or not. Kakashi stated. What if I don't want it to be sealed? Sasuke retorted quite adamantly. He still remembered the overwhelming power coursing through his body when he had used the cursed mark. Kakashi kept his calm at Sasuke's remark, and for some reason, he wasn't entirely surprised on hearing that too. Sasuke had always been a little obsessive when it came to obtain more power for the sake of avenging his clan. Even though he could relate to his situation, he didn't wish for his student to walk down the wrong path. Sasuke, listen to me. This is one of Orochimaru's modified curse mark. Nothing good will come out of it. I'm sure you have noticed the ill effects it will have on your body. Moreover, this is not a request. I will apply a seal on top of that curse mark. Kakashi stated rigidly. Before Sasuke could reply, he heard his name being called for the first match. The first match will be between Sasuke Uchiha and Yoroi Akato. Will the contestants come down? Hayate announced. Sasuke merely scoffed and walked below to the arena and stood opposite to his opponent. Yoroi's face was greatly concealed by the mask he wore around his mouth that hung to around his neck, sunglasses that obscured his eyes, and forehead protector which he wore like a bandana. He also wore the standard attire of his team, consisting of a high-collared, sleeveless, purple shirt with a short-sleeved, white one underneath, a simple obi around his waist, purple pants, blue sandals, and purple fingerless gloves. Both of you, ready? Hayate asked as he looked towards both the contestants. Upon receiving a nod from both, he put his hand down and jumped back, signifying the start of the match. All the people spectating from the standings above intently watched the two to learn more about their fighting styles and abilities. As soon as Hayate jumped back, both the shinobi stared at each other for a few moments, keen to see who would make the first move. Sasuke settled in his traditional taijutsu kata of the Uchiha clan. As a few seconds passed, it was Yoroi who made the first move and rushed towards the Uchiha. Sasuke too rushed towards Yoroi, matching his opponent's speed. As the two were at arm's length, Sasuke immediately ducked and attempted to swat him. Yoroi swiftly jumped above Sasuke's legs and aimed a kick to his head. Blocking the kick with his right arm, Sasuke took the opportunity of Yoroi being midair and quickly got up to give a harsh punch to his opponent's torso. Upon contact, Yoroi flew back and hit the wall behind him with a resounding thud. However, Sasuke immediately fell on one knee as he suddenly felt low on chakra. What did you do? Sasuke asked heatedly with narrowed eyes. Once Yoroi got up from the ground, he smirked at the look on Sasuke's face. Oh. Don't be so surprised. You aren't the only special one here. I have the ability to absorb chakra. All I need is a mere contact with my hand to absorb your chakra. A few more times and you'll be completely out of chakra and will be rendered immobile. Yoroi boasted as he stepped confidently towards Sasuke. However, he stopped midway when he saw Sasuke get up with a smirk on his face. I thought you'd be challenged. Sadly, I was mistaken. Sasuke commented with a sigh. Yoroi's eyes suddenly widened when everything around him shattered like pieces of glass and he found himself standing in the place before the match started. He gasped and took a step back when he saw Sasuke staring at him with his Sharingan. What? Stuttered Yoroi with a horrific look on his face. Capitalizing on the moment, Sasuke immediately rushed behind Yoroi with quick speed and kicked him high into the air. He then jumped too, to appear behind Yoroi, hoping to kick him down onto the ground when the cursed seal suddenly became active and started spreading across his body. Everyone's eyes widened on seeing the seal spread on Sasuke's neck. Anko immediately made a run towards the area to put a stop to the match but was abruptly stopped by Naruto. The match needs to be stopped right now. Let me go, Naruto. Anko more or less yelled with anger, but Naruto's grip on her wrist simply became tighter. You need to calm down. Look back, will you? Sasuke is stronger than you think. Naruto replied calmly. Upon turning back, Anko was utterly shocked to see that Sasuke had managed to stop the seal from spreading further with sheer willpower. She couldn't even begin to understand how he did that. In her younger age, she had struggled a lot in keeping the cursed seal under control and knew how hard it could be. As Sasuke managed to regain his bearings, he momentarily covered his entire body with Raiten chakra. And with speed unseen by the naked eyes, he aimed a brutal kick to Yoroi's shoulder which made him stumble down speedily. As Yoroi fell down, a small crater was formed below and he immediately lost consciousness. A second later when Sasuke landed on the ground, he too fell on the ground with heavy breaths. Kakashi promptly landed beside Sasuke and turned to look at Hayate, who was checking up on Yoroi. Sasuke Uchiha wins the match, Hayate announced. Kakashi then picked up Sasuke despite his struggles and shunshined out of the area. You should go and see if you can help, Naruto, Minato suggested. Without saying another word, Naruto also shunshined out of the area. He's strong, Karui stated as she folded her arms over her chest. She was impressed with his use of the Sharingan along with brief Raiton manipulation he had showed. Agreed. He's a strong shinobi. And the way he manipulated Raiton chakra is similar to the Raikage. Although not on the same level, it was certainly impressive. Still, I doubt if that's all he can do, Samui also commented. Similar chatter was also going among the genin squads. Everyone was greatly impressed with Sasuke's level of Raiton manipulation and his use of Sharingan. But, Guy, Asuma and Kurenai were also worried about the mark they had seen on Sasuke's neck. All three of them knew about the similar mark on Anko and could only speculate as to how Orochimaru managed to come in contact with Sasuke. Would Sakura Haruno and Samui come down? Hayate announced again. Good luck, Sakura-chan. I am sure you'll do well. But, still be careful. She looks to be strong, Hinata said. Sakura smiled on hearing Hinata's words. Thanks, Hinata. I'll try my best, Sakura replied before heading down. Even Ino, Fu, Kiba and Shikamaru wished her luck on her way down. Once Sakura and Samui were ready, Hayate once again moved back to a safe distance. Sakura took out a kunai and held it steadily in her right arm while Samui took out her tanto. As Sakura took a step forward, Samui swiftly moved towards Sakura at an impressive speed. She's fast, Sakura thought, but kept her cool. Taking out 3 more kunais, she immediately threw them towards Samui and promptly jumped into the air and began making hand seals. Samui abruptly stopped and deflected all the kunais with her tanto in her left hand while her free arm took out a couple of shurikens from her pouch and flung it towards Sakura. Suetun, Mizurappa, Sakura said as she expelled a large jet of water from her mouth, aimed at Samui. The force behind the jet of water easily deflected the shurikens and it proceeded towards Samui speedily. Instead of jumping back, Samui too jumped into the air and pointed a beam of electricity from her fingers towards the water. With a look of panic, Sakura quickly stopped her jutsu in fear of being electrocuted. As soon as the 2 kunoichi landed on the ground, they propelled themselves towards each other as Sakura's kunai clashed against Samui's tanto. The two battled in strength for a few seconds, but soon enough Samui began overpowering Sakura. Seeing as she was being pushed back, Sakura let go of her kunai and ducked down to aim a punch to Samui's torso. Sakura's fist barely grazed her when Samui graciously jumped back to avoid a fatal blow. Upon landing back, even though Samui's face showed no emotion whatsoever, she was greatly intrigued. She had felt the amount of chakra that was coated around her opponent's fist. She would have been in serious trouble had she taken that hit. You have impressive reflexes, Samui-san, Sakura stated with a small smile as she took a deep breath. She had been working on accumulating chakra around her fists the past few weeks. Though she hadn't managed to perfect it, she was somewhat getting the hang of it. Wow! Look at those two. I didn't think Sakura had become so good, Ino said, mesmerized by watching the 2 kunoichi fight. And she wasn't the only one. Even Hinata, Kurenai, Enko, Temari and Karui were greatly impressed by the fight. In several parts of the shinobi world, a kunoichi's strength was often deemed to be lower than that of a man. But watching Sakura and Samui's fight made them proud to call themselves kunoichi. This is seriously troublesome. If any one of us were to fight those two, I don't think we could win, Shikamaru commented as he leaned on the railings. Choji and Ino merely nodded while keeping their eyes glued to the arena. Yosh, Sakura-chan, you can do this. Anything is possible when you're in the springtime of your youth. Lee cheered loudly, making everyone else look at the green-clad genin dumbly. That's the spirit, Lee. If you cheer your fellow shinobi more, her confidence will increase even further. Guy also yelled as he patted Lee on the back with a sparkling smile. Ten chuckled awkwardly when she found several people looking in their team's direction, and at this moment, she just wished to escape from everyone's prying gaze. Ugh, are those two for real? Kankuro whispered to his sister quietly. Temari shook her head as she sighed. She couldn't even stand to look at those two's ridiculous outfits. You have interesting friends, Samui commented with a blank expression. Even Sakura laughed with an awkward look. Ah yes. I sure do. Sakura replied, unsure what to say exactly. But I believe we have played for long enough. Samui replied as she made a quick set of hand seals, most of which were unknown to Sakura. In any case, she stood her ground and prepared herself. Rantun, Raiza Sakasu, Samui said out loud. Manipulating Raitun and Suitun chakra at the same time, she released several threads of lightning from her hand which swiftly moved towards the pink-haired girl. With quick feet, Sakura jumped away but was surprised when the beam of lightning bent fluidly and followed after her. Unable to outrun the beams, she acrobatically managed to dodge some of them with great agility, but with sheer number of lightning beams, some of them soon landed a hit and she was pushed back roughly. The very next second, she hit the wall behind her with enough force to make several cracks in it. Soon enough, she slid down and fell on the ground, completely knocked out from the earlier hit. Samui from Kumogakure wins the match. Heiade announced as he checked on Sakura's condition. She had some minor burns on her arms along with some bruises on her back. The medical team shortly came by and took her out of the arena for immediate treatment. Rantun? What else have you been hiding, eh? Minato thought with a chuckle. He had clashed with the Yondaime Reikage on several occasions during the Third Shinobi War and he greatly respected the man for his strength. He also knew that the Rantun Kekkei Genkai was an extremely rare one, even in Kumogakure. He only knew of one other shinobi from Kumo who could use the Rantun Kekkei Genkai. Did you really have to use it? Omoi asked lazily, whilst still sucking on a lollipop in his mouth. Even Karui was surprised to see her teammate use her Kekkei Genkai. She was strong. I did not wish to indulge her in taijutsu. It would have been dangerous. That was all Samui stated as she walked past them and stood at the side. She would not admit it openly, but till now she was pleasantly surprised by the skills of Team 7 from Konoha. Damn. That's not a Kekkei Genkai you see very often. It's my first time seeing a user of Rantun Kekkei Genkai. Asuma commented in appreciation. He thoroughly enjoyed the fight and was certain it would have been a close match if Sakura had more information regarding her opponent. Do you know about that jutsu, Asuma-sensei? Ino asked curiously. Watching Sakura and Samui fight, Ino had suddenly felt a little skeptical of her own skills. Frankly, since graduating from the academy, she hadn't worked on improving her skills greatly. And it made her feel worried about her match. As if sensing her worry, Asuma placed a comforting hand on Ino's shoulder. Don't worry too much about your match. Winning right now is not important. Even if you do lose, you get to learn where you can improve upon in the future. What's important is that you fight to your full capability. Asuma said gently. Ino smiled a little on hearing those words as she felt a bit more confident. She knew she had slacked off in her training up till now. So, she couldn't afford to be sad if things didn't go her way. However, she was extremely proud of Sakura. Watching her improvement gave her motivation to improve further. And to answer your question, I don't necessarily know about that particular jutsu. But I do know that girl has the Rantun Kekkei Genkai. It's generally common in Kaminari no Kuni. Even then, it's an exceedingly rare Kekkei Genkai. Asuma stated. That's amazing. I never knew about that. Ino replied as she unknowingly glanced towards Samui. A lot of the Konoha genins were surprised on hearing that fact. Hinata wanted to go down and check up on her teammate but knew she couldn't do that. She was also worried about Sasuke, since Kakashi and Naruto still hadn't returned with him. But she kept herself composed. She couldn't afford to lose in the preliminary. And judging by the skill displayed by Samui, she could only assume that her teammates were most likely on the same level. Plus, the fact that she might have to face a Jinchuriki was quite unsettling. Even though she had practiced with Naruto on several occasions, he had never used Bija Chakra against her. Essentially, she had never fought against a Jinchuriki who used their Bija's chakra. Hinata then shifted her attention towards the arena again, when Shikamaru and Karui's name was called. Shikamaru, stop acting lazy for this match at least. You can do this. Ino cheered him, which only made the young Nara sigh. Troublesome woman. Shikamaru thought. He'd rather be sitting at home playing shogi or lying under the sun. But his mother would never let him rest if she knew he failed the Chunin exams on purpose. He dreaded what his mother might do if she learnt that he took the exams too lightly. While the preliminaries were going on in the arena at the ground floor of the tower, Kakashi, Naruto, and Sasuke were in a closed room on the second floor. After inspecting the seal with his Rinnegan, Naruto had concluded that Orochimaru had transfused a part of his own soul mixed with sage chakra to form the seal. But the intriguing part was that, the seal burst into small tendrils inside Sasuke's body which connected to each of his chakra pathway. In essence, Orochimaru's cursed seal acted like a parasite which clung to Sasuke's chakra network for support. For the time being, Kakashi had put a suppressing seal on top of the cursed seal which put it in a dormant state. While the suppression seal did not completely block the cursed seal, it would reduce the activity of the seal and the influence it would normally have on Sasuke. Do you think it can be removed? Naruto asked as he sat beside the unconscious form of Sasuke. The application of applying the suppression seal on Sasuke had taken a lot of energy from him, which rendered him exhausted for a few hours. I'm not really sure. Minato-sensei has been working on a seal to counteract this particular seal developed by Orochimaru for a few years. But he hasn't had much success. Kakashi replied tiredly. Really? Who else has it? Naruto asked curiously. He was surprised as well as angry at the fact that Orochimaru had applied the seal someone else too. Enko Mitarashi. I'm not surprised that you don't know about it. In fact, majority of the Konoha populace don't know about it. Before Orochimaru defected Konoha, he had taken Enko as his student. Orochimaru had taken her outside the village stating it was for training. But, days later we learned that he had deserted the village and Enko was found in one of his laboratories locked in a room with that seal. It's a very complex seal and I hope to never see it again. Kakashi revealed somberly. Even Naruto felt saddened on hearing that. He never expected Enko to have gone through such pain and looking at her now, it was quite frankly, hard to believe. That bastard. I should have made sure to kill him in Takigakure. Cursed Naruto as he punched the ground beside him in frustration. Why didn't you finish him off in the forest? I assumed you would have done so. Kakashi asked as he got up from the ground. They had been away from the arena for quite some time. And he really did not wish to miss his students' matches. He had sent a clone of some sort. I can't exactly say what, but the one in the forest did not have the same amount of chakra as Orochimaru. Plus, the chakra I sensed from his clone was somewhat different and it felt much denser than the one I felt from him in Takigakure. Naruto answered with a sigh. He did not wish to reveal the truth to Kakashi right now and thus had to bend the truth a little. Still, he was honestly tired of Orochimaru. The Snake Sanin's existence only brought misery to Konohagakure. But the information he learned from him few days ago was mind-boggling. To know that there's another Rinnegan user was alarming indeed. He would certainly need to talk to Jiraiya about this matter. He was the only one who knew Orochimaru better than anyone else. Anyway, let's head back. I'll drop Sasuke off at the infirmary and then meet you at the arena. Kakashi stated and the two shortly left the room. Unknown location. Running at the top of his speed for the past 3 days, Shisui kept glancing back to check if he was being followed. By the worrisome look etched on his face, it was clear that he was in dire need to get the intel gathered back to Konoha as soon as possible. He had several cuts all over the body, with a large gash across his chest, which was bleeding quite profusely. To top it all off, he had spent a large amount of chakra in his fight against the cloaked man. Over the past few years, Shisui was tasked with keeping tabs on immediate dangers towards Konohagakure no Sato. While most of his assignments kept him revolving between Iwagakure and Kumogakure, he had also been helping Jiraiya gather intel on the inner workings of the Akatsuki. From what he gathered, the group consisted of missing ninja from the various great villages, as well as some of the minor villages. While he wasn't overly worried about most of the members, Jiraiya and him had failed to gather any information about the Akatsuki's leader. The only piece of information which they had found out was that the so-called leader of Akatsuki was revered as a god within the group. Even the black market bounty offices within the Land of Fire refused to give up any information regarding the group. Based on his observations, he had noticed that the Akatsuki normally worked in pairs, wherever they went. Hence, it had piqued his curiosity when he had deduced a strange pattern. Rumors of an Akatsuki member by the name of Zetsu who traveled to the far west reaches of the elemental nations every month, had reached his ears through Jiraiya's spy network. It was just about 2 weeks ago, when Shisui had finally managed to get on that member's trail. The first time when he had laid eyes on Zetsu, he certainly found his appearance to be extremely strange. The member had 2 large Venus flytrap-like extensions that enveloped his head and his upper body, giving him a plant-like appearance. Upon following the Akatsuki member for a few weeks, he had finally come upon a lone house at the top of the hill. It was more or less an abandoned area, with no other living creature living in the area. Using Jiraiya's camouflage jutsu, Shisui had managed to hide his presence from Zetsu and the cloaked man he was meeting with. When Shisui heard the conversation the two were having, he couldn't believe his ears momentarily. His mind had literally gone into a frenzy based on the information he had heard the two discuss. It was at that point, he deduced these two were a threat much larger than the Akatsuki. However, it was also his misfortune that the cloaked man was able to sense his presence somehow. While he had managed to get out with his life intact, he wasn't able to avoid a direct confrontation with the cloaked man. And the chakra he had sensed from that man was simply unnatural. He truly believed even several Kages together may not be able to win against that man. It wasn't even a fight in his opinion. If the man so wished, he could have killed him anytime. He did wonder why his life was spared. But it wasn't important to him at this point. He somehow needed to get back to Konoha and inform the Yondaime, Jiraiya, and Naruto about this matter. If word of this gets out to other nations beforehand, it could have untold consequences upon the shinobi world. Then again, it's possible he let me go because he wanted Konoha to know about his presence. Although, I don't understand how he managed to remain hidden for so long. Shisui thought fearfully. There were very few things that actually scared the seasoned Umbu. But, witnessing that man's power had literally left him speechless. Without turning back, he kept on running, unwilling to look back anymore. Back at the house, on top of the hill sat the cloaked man on a chair, while sipping on his sake cup. His face portrayed a look of deep thought, but as a few seconds passed, a small smirk formed on his face. A young boy, roughly the age of 14, soon entered the room and quietly sat beside the man. "How goes your training, boy?" the man asked, calmly. "Very well, father. I'm getting used to the power of my new eyes. Given a few years, I should be ready to accomplish the task." The boy replied, not willing to meet his father's gaze. Even though the boy seemed calm, there was a slight trepidation in his voice. "Remember, this is the will of the Otsutsuki clan. Once in a while, every world needs a cleansing. This seedbed has suffered enough and will soon be replenished. I already have plans set in motion for the coming years. Soon enough, we both shall have our wishes granted," the man proclaimed as he chugged the remaining sake in his cup. The boy simply nodded, looking towards the man for a few seconds he had come to call father. Even to this day, he didn't know the full extent of his father's true wishes. But he knew this man had the power to correct his past and allow him to live a life he desired when he was just a kid. And for his father to do so, he needed to capture a shinobi by the name of Naruto Namikaze. Forest of Death, Konoha. By the time Naruto had come back to the arena, to his surprise quite a few matches had already been decided. Eyeing the two participants on the arena, he was a bit intrigued about the current matchup. Even though Tenten was an extremely proficient weapons specialist, he felt it would be Temari who would scoop the victory. He was also curious about the prior results, hence, when he glanced towards his father, he wasn't surprised when Minato had sensed his question. "Go, it's fine. You don't have to stand beside me all the time," Minato said with a small smile. Naruto simply nodded, and once again shined. This time, he appeared right behind Hinata, surprising the Hyuga heiress slightly. Naruto's proficiency in Shunshin allowed him to simply phase out of an area and appear in another location in a blink of an eye. Although, the blonde knew his father's Hiraishin no Jutsu was much more versatile compared to the Shunshin no Jutsu. "Naruto-kun," Hinata stated, surprised to see him when she felt his arms sneak around her hips. She quickly batted his arms away, earning a pout from the blonde. She tried to glare at him for his public devotion but couldn't help but chuckle at his facial expression. Even Sakura had to stifle a giggle upon seeing Naruto's face. "You don't have to be so mean, Hinata-chan," Naruto mumbled, mock glaring at his girl. Hinata simply shook her head at Naruto's childish behavior, but smiled, nonetheless. She couldn't deny the fact that she liked being close to him. What would people say, if they saw her? Hinata questioned, nudging him on the shoulder lightly when he moved to stand beside her. "Well, I could care less about what people have to say," was all Naruto said before casting his attention towards the ongoing match. As he had guessed, Tenten was pulling out all of her tricks. By now, a good portion of the arena was scattered with several kunais, shurikens and senbons. Meanwhile, Temari utilized her large fan to use futon ninjutsu to scatter the projectiles away with ease. In his opinion, this match should get over in the next few minutes. "Your match isn't over, is it?" Naruto asked, finally giving up and standing beside her. "No, it's not. Although, you did miss Shino, Niji and Choji's match. Shino won his match, quite easily to my surprise. He fought against one of the Kumogakure genins. Omoi, I think his name was. Hinata stated and looked towards Sakura for confirmation. Upon seeing the pink-haired girl nod, she turned back towards Naruto and continued, and Choji fought against Fu. He fought well, but ultimately, he lost. It was just a bad matchup, I suppose. While Choji is a close-range fighter, Fu is more versatile when it comes to long range, and she took advantage of that fact in her fight against him. And for Kiba, it was just a bad matchup to fight against Niji and Ai-san. Although, Kiba did put up a somewhat good fight. Hinata said. Naruto nodded, hearing Hinata's point of view. Apart from Shikamaru, he trusted Team 7's judgment more than anyone else among the genins. Maybe it was because he knew them since childhood, but he did have a more intimate connection with them. Even so, he wasn't surprised on hearing the results. HMPFF, you don't have to sugarcoat it, Hinata. Next time I face him, it'll definitely end in my victory. Just wait and watch. Right, Akamaru? Kiba said, glancing towards his Ninken partner. The ninja dog barked loudly on seeing his partner's enthusiasm. But, to everyone else it sounded more like a whine. Niji gave no outward reaction to Kiba's statement. He was quite confident in his abilities. He was certain he would never have to see a day when he would lose to someone like Kiba. It was his fate to win, after all. Aren't you confident now, Kiba? Naruto chuckled, on seeing Kiba's carefree attitude. He enjoyed these small moments with his friends. You don't have to rub it in, man. Just let it go, will ya? Kiba said with a twitching eyebrow. Hi. Naruto said, finally, as he put his hands up in defeat. What about Shikamaru? He won, right? Naruto asked. And immediately, he was met with chuckles from most of the Konoha genins. Looking around, he was slightly confused about the reaction. The idiot won, alright. It was just funny, the way he won. He knocked her out by using his Kage main no jutsu on her to make Karui walk all the way back towards the wall. The match got over in less than 10 minutes. It was Ino, who had answered the question. Standing beside her, stood the Nara heir, who couldn't help but sigh at her explanation. However, it was much too troublesome to say anything further. Yeah, it's just as she said. Shikamaru said with a shake of his head. Naruto couldn't help but smirk at the great laziness of the Nara clan. During his time in Umbu, he had worked with quite a few members of the Nara clan. So, he knew firsthand how troublesome things could be for Nara. Everyone's attention soon towards the arena when Hayate called out the winner of the match. Several of the Konoha genins let out of a gasp on seeing Tenten lying unconscious on top of Temari's fan. Ha, this was child's play. I do hope the other Konoha kunoichis can perform better than this. Temari stated smugly, looking at the stand in front of her. She smirked when she saw one of her opponent's teammate grip the railing tightly. Rock Lee had a look of mild anger on his face upon seeing the humiliation her teammate had to go through. He knew Tenten was not a weak kunoichi in any way, rather it was just unfortunate for her to be matched up against someone like Temari. Still, he couldn't help but feel sad for her. Might Guy placed a comforting hand on his student's shoulder in an effort to calm him down. Even Minato frowned slightly upon hearing the kunoichi's words. Getting upset will do you no good, Lee. You just have to let loose your flames of youth in your next match. Do not worry, my student. This is the life of a shinobi. Guy exclaimed as he gave him a thumbs up. Lee nodded his head vigorously as he registered his sensei's words. Yosh, sensei. My match will be one to watch. Lee yelled dramatically, for everyone in the arena to hear him. Once Tenten was taken to the infirmary and Temari had joined back her teammates, Hayate once again took the center of the arena and looked towards the large screen behind the pedestal where the Hokage stood. Will Hinata Hyuga and Kankuro please come down for the 7th match? Hayate called out. Once the names had been called out, Naruto couldn't help but smirk inwardly. He knew his Heim would win the match without any doubt. Good luck, Hinata. I know you'll do great. It should be an easy win for you. Naruto whispered in her ears. She blushed a little at such trust he had in her, but nodded, anyway. Shinaro. Beat him to a pulp, Hinata. Show that Suna Kunoichi that Konoha Kunoichi are no weaklings. Sakura cheered, with a sort of evil aura around her. Of course, Sakura. Hinata replied with a sigh and walked down towards the arena. As Hinata walked down, Naruto's gaze momentarily shifted towards Gaara. He quirked an eyebrow when he noticed that Gaara's eyes were fixated on him. Looking into his eyes, the blonde could feel the bloodlust that was just brimming to burst out. He had already assumed that the seal containing Shikaku must not have been a good one, to have such a violent effect on Gaara. The moment he narrowed his eyes towards the redhead, Gaara clutched his head in pain and began mumbling things to himself. Once Hinata had reached the arena floor, Kankuro too appeared in front of her. She wasn't surprised to see a cocky smirk on his face. She wondered if arrogance was a trait among the Suna Genins. "Get ready to lose, girl," Kankuro stated with a smirk, taking his fighting stance. Accordingly, Hinata adopted her taijutsu style too, in the form of her clan's gentle fist. And her face showed the utmost of concentration. Upon seeing the two participants ready, Heiate called out, "Begin," and jumped back out of their range. "Byakugan," Hinata called out, and the veins around her eyes became promptly visible. As her vision became even clearer than before, she smirked when she realized Kankuro's game plan. On the other hand, Kankuro rushed towards Hinata with several between his fingers, on both his hands. Once he was about 10 feet close to her, he jumped high up in the air, launched all the kunais straight towards her. However, to everyone's surprise, the puppet on Kankuro's back suddenly opened up and launched several senbons soon after. The special aspect about the senbons were the fact that these projectiles were laced with poison. A single hit from these senbon would be enough to render an enemy unconscious for a whole day. Upon seeing the incoming projectiles, Hinata began a spinning motion on her spot as chakra began to surround her. "Katenin," she stated out loud. As she began leaking chakra from all of her tenketsu at once, a protective dome of chakra was thereby created all around her due to her rapid spinning motion. As soon as the kunai came in contact with the Hyuga Eris, all of them repelled in different direction with the same force with which they were thrown. A frown formed on Kankuro's face as he saw the same result with his poison-laced senbon. He clicked his tongue in irritation as his initial plan failed quite miserably. He had hoped to finish this match quite quickly and show these Konoha shinobi their place in the dirt. "Is that all you got?" Hinata taunted, as her spinning motion came to a halt and her eyes landed straight on Kankuro. Even in the midst of this battle, she couldn't help but think that Naruto's overconfidence was somehow rubbing off on her. "You bitch, wait. I'll show you not to underestimate me," Kankuro replied with narrowed eyes. He hated being underestimated. During all of his missions for Sunagakure, his performance had always been compared to that of Gaara and Temari. While he knew he wasn't as strong as his siblings, he still could not bear listening to people make comparisons. Hinata simply kept a neutral face as she stared at him and motioned him to make the first move. She was quite confident in her ability to see through his moves. "You're going to regret this, Hyuga. Maybe you should just go running behind that Namikaze," Kankuro taunted as he detached his puppet from the back. "Now, you'll know the terror of Karasu," he added. "Hinata, this match is boring me. Finish it already, will you?" Naruto called out from the stands. Several of the Konoha shinobi chuckled on seeing the lazy expression on the blonde's face, while Kankuro could only scowl at the blonde's behavior. Back on the stands, Kakashi had just returned from dropping Sasuke at the infirmary. The moment he appeared beside Team 7, Sakura immediately bombarded him with questions regarding the Uchiha. "Kakashi-sensei, is he going to be okay?" she questioned. The Jounin sensei smiled underneath his mask, as he noticed the worrisome look on her face. She certainly reminded him of a bit of Rin, as both of them had the tendency to always look out for the other's welfare. "There's no need to worry, Sakura. He'll be fine with some rest. Moreover, congratulations on your match. Even though you lost, I heard you put up quite a good match. I'm proud of you. I'm sure in the next Chunin exams, you'll surely make it through," Kakashi replied. She blushed a little under his praise but nodded, nonetheless. "Thanks, sensei. I will try harder in the next exams for sure," Sakura exclaimed. Still, one could see the slight bit of disappointment on her face. "Don't worry too much about it, Sakura. It was just unfortunate that you were paired up against someone with the Rantan Kekii Genkai. It's a very rare one, even in Kumogakure. Even I have never fought against someone with that Kekii Genkai. You're a strong kunoichi, anyhow. Don't let one loss get you so upset," Naruto said, upon hearing the two conversing. The next second, all of their attention turned towards the arena, when they heard Kankuro scream quite dramatically. When the Suna Genin had brought out his puppet named Karasu to fight Hinata, he had already doomed himself for this fight. With her superior speed and a complete 360-degree view of the arena, she was easily able to maneuver herself around the puppet's several arms. And once she was able to bypass the puppet's defenses, with the help of few well-placed strikes, Hinata had managed to dismantle Karasu into numerous segments. Following that, Hinata seemed to dance around in the arena as her hands flowed through the air, seemingly cutting through empty space. However, those with intimate knowledge of the art of puppetry and those with Jujutsu were able to see that Hinata was cutting the chakra strings that were still attached between Kankuro and Karasu. What the hell? Kankuro blurted out in surprise. No one had ever managed to outclass him in such a manner. Then again, he had also never faced someone with a Jujutsu. Seeing the Suna Genin's momentary lapse of concentration, Hinata dashed towards him and struck several tenketsu on his upper chest that rendered Kankuro unconscious. Once Kankuro fell onto the ground, Temari could only watch in utter surprise as his younger brother defeated with such ease. Her eyes then darted towards the Hyuga heiress. She didn't think of her to be so capable. Since, in her opinion, she looked quite fragile. It was indeed an eye-opener for her, to not underestimate these Konoha shinobi. Among the Kumogakure shinobi, Samui kept a close eye on the Hyuga heiress. She had heard rumors within the village that Naruto Namikaze and Hinata Hyuga were very close to each other. Based on those, she had assumed that Hinata may have also trained with the famous Kuroshire. And to be quite frank, she was not surprised with the skill displayed by Hinata, or the lack of it, for that matter. Even in Kumogakure, they were taught to avoid a taijutsu fight with a member of the Hyuga. A small smile graced her lips at the prospect of fighting her. She'd be a good opponent to test my limits, thought the blonde Kumo Kunoichi. You're in an awfully good mood, Samui, Karui stated, glancing towards her blonde teammate. In all of her time, she hardly ever saw Samui portray any sort of emotion. So, it was quite surprising for her. Team 7, we'll have to watch out for them in the future, was all Samui stated. Both Karui and Omoi could only sigh at her cryptic words. Omoi was about to open his mouth to say something, when a glare from the redhead shut up him immediately. Winner of this match, Hinata Hyuga. Hey-8 called out, once he had checked Kankuro's pulse to make sure he was alive. While it was allowed to kill your opponent in the Chunin exams, it was still frowned upon. Hinata gave a small bow to her opponent and walked upstairs towards her teammates. It was a tradition in the Hyuga clan to bow to their opponent after a match as a sign of respect for the fight. This is troublesome. Team 7 is just way too good, Shikamaru mumbled under his breath. Asuma smacked him lightly on the back upon hearing the statement. Don't worry about it. You'll be trained properly after the preliminaries, to face your opponent in the finals on an even ground. Plus, don't sell your intellect so short. I'm sure you've already thought of ways to counter their abilities based on what you've seen, Asuma said with a chuckle. But, sensei, they really are so far ahead of us. I didn't think Sakura would be this strong. But, look at her. She could probably beat all of us. And I imagine Sasuke and Hinata to be even more hard to deal with, Ino replied. She was certainly proud that her friends were winning their matches. But, seeing their skills and improvement firsthand really put things into perspective for her. Choji just decided to remain quiet, unsure if he should add anything. However, he also knew that he needed to improve his skills to better support his teammates in the field. That was a smart tactic to disable the puppet first and then going for the puppet master, Hinata. You've grown well, Kakashi commented, once she joined her teammates on the stands. That was great, Hinata. Now, 2 Genins in our Team 7 have qualified for the finals. I'm sure both Sasuke-kun and you will be promoted to Genins, Sakura stated with a large smile on her face. Even though she was mildly disappointed at her loss, she was more than happy about her teammates' wins. Well, there was no doubt, was there? I knew she would win from the start, Naruto exclaimed and hugged her tightly. Her face turned a bit red upon being hugged. She just patted him on the back a few times and Naruto instantly let her go. He rubbed the back of his head and chuckled awkwardly when he realized many people were gawking at them. Well, let them stare if they want. It's not like we were doing anything, Naruto said with a huff. The blonde's attention immediately turned to his sensei when he heard some perverted giggles coming from him. I hope you're not getting any wrong ideas, sensei, Naruto whispered, with a sweet smile. Kakashi immediately stopped his giggling and shuddered at the sight before him. He could probably deal with Naruto when it came to this situation, but seeing an evil aura appear around Hinata did indeed scare him to death. He wondered if this was how Jiraiya felt every time he got caught peeking on women. Even Minato chuckled seeing the scene with Team 7. She certainly reminds me of Kushina a bit, seeing her get flustered and angry all of a sudden. He thought solemnly. Anyhow, he was also impressed by most of the matches he had seen so far. He would certainly remember to congratulate all of the Konoha Genins personally after the preliminaries would be over. Most of them had shown impressive growth since their academy days. The future ought to remain bright, no matter what. Isn't that right, Sarutobi-sama? Minato thought, gazing at the young faces of Konoha Genins. The next match will be between Gaara of Sunagakure and Rock Lee of Konohagakure. Please make your way to the arena. Hey-8 called out. He coughed a few times, as he saw Gaara appear below in a Suna Shunshin, while Rock Lee jumped from the stands and landed acrobatically on the fighting arena. Kakashi walked to stand beside Guy, as he was slightly worried about this fixture. He knew that Gaara was the Suna Jinchuriki and as such, it might spell trouble for Lee, if Gaara ended up using Shikaku's chakra. And based on the bloodlust he frequently felt from the kid, Kakashi was certain it might become a possibility. Guy, you should consider pulling Lee off this match. That Gaara kid is a Jinchuriki. And I'm sure even you've noticed how unstable he may be. Kakashi said in a low voice. Guy glanced towards Kakashi from the corner of his eyes but did not say a word for a few seconds. I'm glad you're worried about my student, Kakashi. But Lee wishes to prove something to himself. And as his master, I cannot deny him that. Of course, if he's in serious trouble, I'll jump right in. It'll be fine, Kakashi. Guy replied, in an uncharacteristically serious manner. I hope you're right. Kakashi whispered, as he decided to just stand beside his longtime friend. Back on the arena, Hey-8 had already called for the start of the match. While Lee was in his taijutsu stance for the Goken style, Gaara merely stood with his hands folded over his chest. As a few more seconds passed, a look of confusion appeared on Lee's face. Do you not wish to fight, Gaara-kun? Lee asked, upon dropping his stance. As Gaara lifted his head up to gaze at the green-clad genin, everyone could see the look of boredom on the Suna genin's face. Through the preliminaries, most of the genins had heard bits and pieces about Gaara's impeccable defense. Hence, everyone wanted to see what the kid was actually capable of. You do not interest me. Your blood is not going to satisfy mother. Gaara replied after a few moments and yet again closed his eyes. Lee clenched his fists upon being looked down. It was his deep desire to prove that through hard work, even a loser will be able to defeat a genius. Taking a deep breath, he relaxed himself and once again got into the Goken stance. Up in the stands, Temari smirked upon seeing Lee. She was not in the slightest bit worried about her brother. She was sure, Gaara would come out of this match unscathed, as he always did. Although, her eyes widened when she saw Lee suddenly disappear from his position. The next moment Lee appeared behind Gaara, with a kick aimed to his head. To everyone it looked as if Gaara would be flung away any second. However, before Lee's foot could even come close to hitting him, large amounts of sands came spiraling out of the gourd on Gaara's back and blocked the kick promptly. For a split second Lee's eyes widened, but soon enough a new spark of determination lit up in them. As Lee continued his barrage of fast series of kicks and punches from all directions, Gaara's sand instinctively kept protecting from all dangers around him. Even through all the commotion going around him, he kept his eyes closed and arms folded over his chest. This bores me. Gaara whispered under his breath. And just then, the speed of his sand doubled, taking Lee and everyone else by surprise. The sand encased over Lee's left foot and threw him harshly against the walls of the arena. Majority of the people gasped upon hearing the loud thud that resounded as Lee's body slid down the walls and hit the floor. Yet again to everyone's surprise, Lee simply sprung back into action and dusted himself off as if nothing had ever happened. The kid has some serious tenacity. But I don't see him lasting against an opponent like that for much longer. Karui stated with interest. She'd be lying if she said that she didn't have much expectation from the competition this year in Chunin exams. Although her beliefs were thoroughly crushed when the Nara heir had beat her, quite embarrassingly too. But, seeing the bowl-cut genin's taijutsu had really surprised her. She was certain, most genins in her village could not go up against the speed displayed by Lee. And she was furthermore surprised by Gaara's innate ability to use sand. Man, we really should have done some more research against our competition before coming here. This is just a pain. I can frankly say there's several people here who could beat me. Omoi said while sucking on his lollipop. His eyes, although, were firmly glued to the match going on below. As Lee kept on dodging the sand, he was unable to find any sort of opening to land a hit on Gaara. Many people in the arena were intrigued when all they saw was a smile form on the green-clad Genin's face. Lee ran all the way to the back and jumped up on top of the large statue to get a few seconds of breathing space. By now, even Gaara had loosened his stance and stared at Lee with a sort of interest. No one had managed to survive his sand barrage for this long. A look of mild interest glazed over the Suna Genin's eyes as he kept staring towards Lee. Bring it on, already. Let me feed your blood to mother. Gaara said with a sadistic smile. For a few seconds no one said a word in the arena as their eyes kept glancing between Lee and Gaara. Temari looked a little worried about the look on Gaara's face. He would often get that look when he found something of interest. She had to commend Lee for surviving this long against her brother. But she still didn't think that Konoha Genin would be able to defeat her brother. Why doesn't he use in ninjutsu? Fu asked, a question which was revolving in majority of the people's mind. Those who knew Might Guy personally had already guessed the reason for that. Guy kept his eyes on his student as Lee appeared to be in deep thought for a few seconds. That's because he is unable to use ninjutsu. His chakra coils are not formed properly, which hinders him to utilize his chakra completely. Guy stated. Several of the Genins now looked at Lee in wonder. Especially those from Kyumogakure and the Konoha Genins of Team 8 and 10. He wasn't surprised when he saw his student turn towards him. The Jounin knew exactly what Lee was thinking, and this was the perfect stage to allow him to use the full extent of his power. I give you permission, Lee. Do it. Guy yelled loudly, while giving a thumbs up to his student. At this point, even Niji was intrigued to see how Lee would fight at his best. He had always dismissed his teammates' battle prowess, thinking that no one would be able to measure up to a Hyuga in terms of taijutsu. Lee smirked when he got the go-ahead from his master. He bent down and seemed to remove weights from his legs. Yet again, quite a few people were surprised at this revelation. However, nothing could compare to their shock when Lee dropped the weights on the ground and two large craters were formed on either sides. What the hell? Temari blurted out in surprise. This indeed was the same line of thought coursing everyone's mind. Even Naruto was surprised to see that. He had never gone around wearing weights himself, rather he used the resistance and gravity seals made by his father to improve his speed and movement. But, to see this Genin go through such hard work and persistence, put a smile on his face. Yosh, I can move freely now. Lee declared. Before most could even realize what had happened, Lee instantly vanished from his spot, and the next second, he was in front of Gaara. And this time, his punch bypassed the speed of the sand and connected with Gaara's sand. However, instead of being thrown back, Gaara was merely pushed a few meters back. However, this time people could see cracks on Gaara's face which were spreading with every passing moment. Before Gaara could retaliate or think of anything else, Lee once again disappeared from his spot and kicked the Suna Genin in his chin, flinging him high into the air. Just as Lee appeared above Gaara to perform a drop kick, the sand protecting him moved at even faster speed and wrapped around Lee's right half of the body and threw him towards the ground. A large crater formed on the ground as Lee hit the surface with incredible speed. The green-clad Genin groaned in pain, as his body began to ache from the pain. However, he got no time to rest as his eyes noticed the sand once again moving towards him. He stood up, albeit a bit shakily, and put his arms up in a cross formation. The sand hit him square in the arms as Lee was once again pushed back. Gaara smiled in satisfaction as he witnessed his opponent groan in discomfort. This is what he lived for. To see his enemies squirm in agony, to see them bleed to death. The Genins and Jounin sensei standing above could only watch as the Suna Genin kept barraging Lee with waves and waves of sand. While the Kyumogakure and Sunagakure shinobi were impressed with Lee's tenacity, those from Konoha could only watch in horror at the ease with which their comrade was being pushed around. Lee, you don't have to do this anymore. Sakura yelled from above. Even though it had only been a brief time since she had come to know him, Sakura had come to respect him as a shinobi. Even during the second part of the Chunin exams, he was the first one to come to their aid when her team was attacked by the Sound Genins. You may end up dying if this continues. Sakura added. Sakura, stop. There's no point in reaching out to him at this point. I can understand why Lee wants to push himself this hard. Look at his face. Even though he appears to be struggling, he has a smile on his face. And he's trying to adjust his body to the speed of the sand with every hit. Naruto commented. The blonde certainly had to give credit to the taijutsu specialist for such tenacity. He's right, Sakura. Lee seems to be adjusting with every hit. Even though his moves may appear to be sluggish, but his reaction time for defending is improving with every second. It's amazing. Kakashi stated, as he analyzed the fight with his Sharingan. Guy-sensei, please forgive me. But I'm going to have to use this. I have to prove my own way of the ninja. I shall not be the one to lose here. Lee yelled. Suddenly chakra began leaking out of his entire body and a green aura appeared around him. Several of the veins on his face and neck bulged out, due to the pressure he was exerting on his body. What's happening? Ino asked out in wonder. She couldn't believe that Lee could be this strong. This was simply unnatural in her eyes. Even Asuma and Kurenai were at a loss of words. To be able to open one of the 8 inner gates at his age should practically be impossible. Shomon, Kai, Gate of Pain, open, Lee yelled. Gaara could only stare at his opponent in irritation. He simply wished to feed his opponent's blood to his sand and this genin was only delaying the inevitable. However, before he could think of doing anything further, he was kicked to the side of his face. He was once again kicked to his torso, but this time from the other side that flung him in the opposite direction. By now, Gaara was being relentlessly kicked around in the air. The sand armor that protected Gaara from most attacks had already begun to peel off and the people could finally see the Gaara's skin, which appeared to be extremely wounded due to the ferocity of the attacks. Such power. This is not just talent. He must have pushed himself past exhaustion every single day in training to achieve this feat, Kakashi said at the display. He himself could only open the first of the inner gates. Even Minato was highly impressed by the taijutsu displayed by Lee. This is just too fast. I can't even see Lee anymore. Shikamaru stated as he gripped the railing on the stand tightly. His eyes darted in all directions to keep track of the Konoha genin but was unable to do so. Finally, Lee kicked the Suna genin, in the chin yet again, that pushed him high into the air. Lee appeared above Gaara, with both his arms cocked back, ready to punch his opponent. He could feel the pain coursing through his body. And it was killing him with every movement of the body. But this what he had trained for throughout his life. To prove to people that even without ninjutsu or genjutsu, he could become a splendid ninja. No, not yet. I will finish this with one last move. Tamen, Kai, Gate of Limit, open, Lee thought. In a split second, Lee once again disappeared from above Gaara, and this time, Gaara felt an incredible jolt of pain run through his stomach, as his eyes landed on Lee's fist punching him straight in the gut. Gaara went straight down and hit the floor, making dust flow all around the place he contacted. As Lee landed on the ground, he released the technique as the aura around him disappeared. And the people around could finally see how worn out the green-clad genin was. Lee was heaving as he rested on the ground. There were several wounds on his body and the stiff movement of his body was an indicator of the great stress placed on body. As the dust settled around Gaara, it was plainly visible that Gaara was in no shape to get up himself. He was bleeding from his arms, as well as there was a large cut on his forehead, along with numerous small cuts all over his arms. However, everyone was shocked to see that the gourd on Gaara's back had turned into sand that had saved him from a fatal impact and possibly death. What the? Lee breathed out as he noticed that Gaara was still conscious. He willed himself to stand up but eventually fell on one knee. He cursed himself and then his eyes darted towards his opponent, who seemed to be looking at him with a maniacal expression. This is the end. Gaara whispered through clenched jaws. He was annoyed that he had taken such a beating. Never in his life had he taken so much damage in his life. Yet, this no one had managed to not only break through his sand armor, but also make him bleed. The youngest son of the Yondaime Kazekage pushed himself off the ground and stood up shakily. This is the end of the line for you. Now, mother shall feast on your blood. Gaara said as the sand began covering his body. In a matter of few seconds, Gaara's entire right side was covered in sand in a thick and disfigured way. However, the most prominent change was his right eye, which now had black sclera and yellow irises. Gaara began to laugh maniacally as he eyed his prey. His opponent had certainly given him more entertainment than he had figured. He would have to reward this genin for the ultimate fight he had been in, till now. He moved his hand towards Lee, and in an instant the sand rushed out from his body and moved towards Lee at incredible speeds. Temari could only stare in horror, as she saw what had become of Gaara. She couldn't believe that a mere genin had pushed her brother so much to actually partially transform. Even Baki, Suna Genin's Jounin sensei, was sweating slightly at the scene before him. He had specifically instructed Gaara not to use Shikaku's power. He could only hope that the situation did not get too out of hand at the moment. What is this? He can still move and use his sand after the reverse lotus? Lee thought, flabbergasted. Though he could see Gaara's partial transformation, he did not think much of it. He just assumed it be another of Gaara's ninjutsu to make his defense stronger. With sheer willpower, he pushed himself to stand on his 2 legs and prepared to move out of the way. At this point, everyone could see how frail Lee's body had gotten as his arms and legs were shaking quite a lot. Oh shit, I can't move anymore. Lee thought, frantically. Gaara's smile widened even more as he noticed the predicament Lee was in. However, just as the sand was about to hit Lee, Guy appeared in front of his student and pushed the sand out with just his hands. Lee's eyes widened upon seeing his master and he breathed a sigh of relief. On the other side, Gaara gritted his teeth in frustration at being denied his kill. He narrowed his eyes when he saw Lee being saved by his sensei. Memories of the past came flushing into his mind as he clutched his head in pain. He could not understand why his opponent was saved. All heads in the arena immediately turned towards Gaara, when a chakra spike could be felt. Most of the Konoha Jounin promptly turned on guard when they felt the rise in Bija chakra. While it wasn't against to use Bija chakra in Chunin exams per se, Konoha would indeed take matters into their hands if Gaara ended up losing control. Hence, the reason why Minato discreetly ordered all the Jounin in the area to stand down for the time being. Making a single hand seal, Gaara amassed large amount of sand around himself and transformed them into spikes. However, before he could make another move, he was suddenly pushed back due to an invisible force and hit the wall behind him, making several cracks appear on the wall. Glancing in front him, his eyes widened when he noticed Naruto Namikaze standing before him with an unreadable expression on his face. When did he move? Temari wondered out loud as she glanced to her right, where the blonde stood mere seconds ago. Even if her brother was under the influence of the Ichibi, she felt it was her duty to stand up for Gaara. They were family after all. She was about to jump down when Baki stopped her. Don't. You'll simply get into more trouble. The match was over the moment Lee's sensei stepped in, to protect him. Don't ruin the plans which are already in motion. Baki whispered into her ears. Temari clenched her fists as she could do nothing but stare as the Namikaze walked towards her brother. Why? Why did you stop me from killing them? Gaara demanded, staring into Naruto's eyes. The blonde sighed at seeing the anger and resentment in the redhead's eyes. It saddened him to think of the pain Gaara must have gone through his childhood to turn him into this. But this was not the moment for him to have a talk with Shikaku. He did wish to have a talk with Gaara, but with the redhead being in an enraged state, he knew it wouldn't simply be possible. Go to sleep, Gaara. We shall have a talk later. Naruto stated as he casted a genjutsu on him with his Sharingan. The very next second, Gaara's eyes seemed to become dazed as he soon fell into a deep slumber. Glancing back, he noticed that Lee was indeed in a very bad shape. With the amount of stress that the fifth gate put on his body, Naruto was even surprised that Lee was able to stay conscious. While he was extremely impressed by Lee's aptitude in taijutsu, he certainly needed to learn when to restrain himself. Temari and Baki soon jumped below and picked Gaara up, without giving him a single glance. Thank God, it's over. Hinata commented under her breath. Sakura could only nod in response. She had never seen 2 genins have such an intense battle. Moreover, she felt a cold shudder run through her body upon seeing Gaara's transformation. She didn't know if she could survive a fight against someone like him. As the Genins and Jounin sensei came out of their surprised state upon seeing Gaara go for the kill, Heiei moved into the center of the fighting arena to address the participants. Since there's only one contestant left, Ino Yamenka will be getting a free pass to the Chunin exam finals. Thereby, the second round of the Chunin exam comes to an end. The finalists please come below, while Hokage-sama will address you regarding the Chunin exam finals. Heiei stated. Even as he announced the details, his eyes kept glancing towards Lee and Guy. In his opinion, it was reckless what the kid did, but he could also understand Lee's desire to prove that one could be an amazing shinobi with taijutsu alone. He himself specialized in kenjutsu and even integrated his katana into his taijutsu moves to have an edge. After the commotion was over, the finalists, which included Samui, Shikamaru, Hinata, Niji, Temari, Shino, Fu, Ino, Sasuke and Gaara were now gathered in the fighting arena with Minato standing before them. Although Gaara was asleep due to Naruto's genjutsu, whereas Sasuke was still resting in the infirmary due to chakra exhaustion and the after-effects of the curse marks. The finalists' respective Jounin sensei stood behind their students as Minato began addressing the genins. Congratulations to all of you for progressing to the final stage of the Chunin exams. I'm sure you all have learned much about your possible opponent's abilities during this preliminary round. The finals will be held 1 month from now. This 1-month period is to give you time to prepare yourself in any way you wish. The finals will be attended by various merchants, feudal lords and top officials from various villages, major and minor both. So, it's important that all of you put a good performance. Your opponents will be made known to you on the day of the finals. Minato stated and turned towards Shikamaru, who seemed to have raised his hand. He nodded as he allowed the Nara heir to ask away. Hokage-sama, how will the Chunin promotion work? Will only one of us be promoted, or is there a possibility that a few us can be? Shikamaru questioned. Minato smirked upon hearing the question. Leave it to Shikaku's son to think of the practicalities of a situation. He thought. You're right in a way. There's a possibility that all of you may get promoted, and there's also a chance that none of you will. As I said, the finals will be spectated by various village top officials, which will also include the Kage of competing villages. So, if you do put up a good performance, you'll have a shot to be a Chunin. Even if you get knocked out early in the finals. Minato clarified. Shikamaru nodded, as he already began formulating a plan. Minato then went on to answer a few more questions by several other genins regarding the month break from the Chunin exams. Following that, he asked Guy to stay back as he wished to discuss Lee's condition with the Jounin. Well, let's get out of here, shall we? We better go check up on Sasuke. Naruto asked, standing beside Hinata and Sakura. The two girls were quite worried about their third teammate, since they hadn't seen him since his match. The three walked out of the arena and towards the infirmary then. 3 days later. Since the end of the Chunin exams, majority of the finalists had already taken to sculpting their battle strategies for the finals. While the Kumogakure genins had decided to go back to their village for the month, the Suna genins had decided to stay within Konohagakure. Since the Chunin exam finals are considered among the most prestigious events for a shinobi village, it also entailed the village to have more security for the duration. Their umbu placed on each and every dignitary hotels, hot springs, restaurants, hospitals, and all the exists within the village. Those shinobi which were outside the village were being restationed either back to the village or close to it for border patrol. The genins that were admitted to the infirmary during the preliminaries were thereafter shifted to the Konoha hospital for further treatment. We currently find Naruto sitting on a chair beside Sasuke, who was still in hospital clothes. When the hell can I get out of this place? Sasuke grumbled. For the past 3 days, he had been stuck in this place. Nurses would come and go out of his room while periodically checking his vitals. He had been the most annoyed when Tsunade had bopped him on the head to make him sit still. Just relax, will you? Tsunade-bachan did say that you'd be out by today evening. We need to make sure that the mark on your neck doesn't have too adverse of an effect on your chakra network. And there's no one better than her when it comes to medical ninjutsu. Naruto answered. He chuckled lightly on seeing the annoyed look on his face. He himself did not like the feeling of being in an all-white room too. So, he could relate with his brethren to some extent. Well, you're not the one stuck here, yeah? So, don't lecture me. Sasuke replied, quite grumpily. The Uchiha was quite annoyed when all he heard in reply was quiet laughter from his sensei and Naruto. He just huffed and turned the other way. Sasuke, anyway, we are here to discuss about your training for the next 1 month. Your opponent will be announced on the day of the finals. So, you'll have to be prepared for anything and anyone. There are quite a few people you'll have to be wary about. Kakashi commented, leaving all the jokes aside. The statement immediately got Sasuke's attention as he promptly whipped his head to Kakashi's direction. Oh. What kind of training will we be doing? Sasuke asked with interest. Even though his strength had steadily increased over the years, he still wasn't close to Itachi's level. Thinking about his brother, Orochimaru's words suddenly reverberated in his mind. The truth about the Uchiha clan massacre. A secret that the Hokage, his mother, and even his brother had been hiding from him. His mood suddenly flipped as he thought about it more. Both Naruto and Kakashi saw the change in Sasuke's demeanor. And the blonde was the first one to figure out what Sasuke may have been thinking about. This is not the time, Sasuke. Trust me, I'll tell you about the truth, myself. But you have to trust me now. I have never lied to you intentionally. So, just be patient and before the 1 month is over, your eyes won't be clouded anymore. Naruto stated with a serious expression. The Namikaze was aware how important this must be for Sasuke. But, the truth of the matter is, he didn't really know how to break it out to Sasuke. Though, he didn't play a direct part in the Uchiha massacre, he was one of the people who had been aware of the truth from the beginning. Kakashi glanced towards his student as he understood the meaning behind those words. Even if he was surprised as to how Sasuke managed to learn about any discrepancies about that matter, he didn't show it. Before the three could talk about anything further, an Umbu suddenly materialized in the room, beside Naruto. Washi Taicho, Inu Taicho, Hokage-sama has requested you two to meet him in Ward P12, immediately. It's an urgent matter regarding Tora Taicho. The Umbu stated. Both Naruto and Kakashi became alert on hearing the information. The P-section ward in the hospital was mainly for Umbu operatives and it was generally used in the worst-case scenarios. You go ahead, we'll be there momentarily. Kakashi replied. He could see the fear on Naruto's face. Shisui was someone very close to Naruto. And to hear that he may be on the verge on death would indeed put him through shock. Through all this, Sasuke had decided to keep his silence as he realized these were matters not meant for his ears. Although, he was curious as to what had gotten Kakashi and Naruto so worried all of a sudden. Sasuke, return home once you're discharged. We'll see you in the Namikaze compound. Kakashi said, keeping it brief. Placing a hand on the blonde's shoulder, the copy ninja brought him out of his thoughts. There's no use thinking too much right now. We'll know the situation once we go see him. He added. Soon enough, both Naruto and Kakashi shined out of the room, leaving Sasuke alone with his thoughts. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.